Welcome to this month's deep dive, and this month we've got some people in to discuss AI. So I'm Nikki Cornish and I am a partner here at Francis Clark. I'll go around the room and ask our participants to introduce themselves. So I just have to say that I'm a complete novice when it comes to AI, so I'm hoping that I'm going to learn a huge amount today, and it should be really interesting. So Alistair, shall we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the intro. Alistair Jones. I head up the data and AI practice at Transparency Solutions Limited. So yeah, looking forward to having a chat today. Obviously, we'll bring different perspectives to this call with the people you got on here, so it's going to be hopefully an opportunity for me to learn some things as well as we get into it. So.
Thank you. And Chris, do you want to go next?
Hi everyone, my name is Chris. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Hertzian. We've been developing artificial intelligence solutions since 2014, so we're pre-ChatGPT. We create products in the AI space which focus on analysing big corpuses of data to then sell the insights into big clients in the games industry and the health industry.
Amy?
Hi, thanks Nikki. My name's Amy Ralston. I'm an associate at Stephen Scone. We're a B Corp employee-owned law firm. I specialise in intellectual property and technology. So really excited today to talk about some of the legal implications of using AI, a hot topic. So I'll pass to my colleague Max.
Yeah, hi everyone. Amy's made my intro a lot easier by talking about the firm. So I'm also from Stephen Scone. I'm a data protection specialist, so primarily working with clients on their data protection compliance, but also a little bit of my role is internally advising the firm on data protection as well. So coming at it from that angle today.
Brilliant, thank you. So the format for today is basically I've got some questions and we'll just have a chat around them. We've also asked ChatGPT a couple of the questions, so I'll read out what we got from ChatGPT when we get to those. And if anyone who's participating or would like to ask any questions, then if you just type it into the chat box, then I'll keep an eye on those, and we might do them at the time or save them to the end. So we're here until 12:45. So if I start, so just as a broad introduction, what is AI? How would we define it? So who wants to pick that one up?
I guess I can start with that. I think, so the definition of AI changes depending who you speak to, generally. In 2014, when we started AI, people used to refer to it as natural language processing, which was in the industry, in the area we worked in AI, processing text data. But now AI encompasses a lot more systems and a lot more tools, which effectively it's just a computer system which mimics human intelligence, which is why it's artificial. One of the things I think where people get confused is that artificial intelligence isn't human intelligence. I come across a lot of people who talk about AI as if it's kind of like Terminators and it's sci-fi, but it's not actually. Artificial intelligence is just computer systems which are designed to mimic human intelligence to do various tasks. As a broad summary, that's what I'd go with. Alistair, I don't know if you've got a different definition to share.
I think I agree with your definition, but I might broaden it a little bit as well. I think all the ChatGPT talk at the moment has made people narrow their thinking about what AI is. And like yourselves, we've been working in this technology space for a long time, and I think what was machine learning and perhaps quite specific use cases and tasks and application of a subset of AI is something that we've been doing for many years. But I think when it starts to cross over into everyday things that people recognize in their day, like school kids doing their homework and people using it to write best man speeches and stuff, I think that the technology then becomes accessible to people in the ordinary world. And maybe that element of AI is the thing that people lean on that helps them understand what it is a little bit better. making machines think like humans is a very simplistic, high-level definition, which is where you get to with it. But I think we break that down into its technology disciplines, and I know you guys have some quite specialist work that you do in this field, Chris, in terms of what your business delivers, and we do as well. And you can see, I don't know, 20, 30 different verticals under that umbrella of AI. And it's challenging as well. I think you look at it from a broader perspective as somebody driving, owning, working in a business, trying to leverage technology to improve what an organization just delivers in terms of its outcome. And I'm sure we'll approach some of these questions. That positioning AI as a single one-line summary in terms of where it can be used and applied within an organization, it's quite a tricky thing to assess. But imitating human behavior is probably a good start point. I think your one-line entry probably sums it up in a pretty good way. I suppose I'd pass that over to Amy and Max perhaps, and see if from the legal side of it, whether you're having that challenge in terms of what people are pushing back, and some of the cases you might be seeing where that description maybe means something different depending on the context of how it's used. I don't know.
The ICO, which is the data protection regulator in the UK, would define AI as algorithm-based technology that solves complex issues that humans could solve. I think there's something along the lines of that sort of complex issues which a human could solve. So it's algorithm-based. So I guess, there's no set legal definition. The ICO are a regulator of one sort of niche area of law. But I think more broadly speaking, there could be another definition in other areas, which I'll pass over to Amy for.
Thanks, Max. So in 2021, although we don't have an actual dedicated regulation or legal instrument on artificial intelligence itself, you'll hear sort of chatters in the EU of the AI Act that's being discussed, and the European Parliament are hoping to sort of land somewhere on that by the end of the year. But what we do have is we've got the National Security and Investment Act. Sorry to keep on citing acts. It's a bit dull, isn't it? Let's get back to the sort of ethical issues. But anyway, I'll just sort of briefly touch on what the sort of legal definition-ish that we have. It's a bit long, so I'm just going to paraphrase that it's basically technology that enables the programming or training of a device or software to do a particular thing. So back to Max, helping to solve a problem that humans otherwise could solve. So it's quite fluid, really. And I think that shows from Chris saying, if we started with NPL, and it's evolving in terms of what it is. It's quite wide ranging as well. It encompasses quite a lot of different technologies.
I wonder if some of your challenges will come from is it AI before you get into the legal debate about whether somebody deals with that challenge or somebody else deals with that challenge. Potentially, you could see a bit of that blurring of the line starting to appear between what is just technology and what is specifically artificial intelligence and a particular use of technology.
Yeah, and in particular, that when it comes to the laws that we've got in the UK at the moment, it particularly focuses on computer-generated work. So rather than calling it AI, it's computer-generated works, what that output is and where that's come from. It's less important where it's come from. It's more what it is and sort of, if it's been software generated.
Yeah, makes sense.
Should I, so this is one of the questions that we did ask ChatGPT. Shall I read out what we got after a few iterations of, so we got it down from lots of pages to a paragraph. So artificial intelligence is essentially the brain power behind computers, making them do some pretty nifty human-like tricks. You've probably chatted with a virtual assistant or marveled at how your phone recognizes faces in photos. That's narrow AI doing its thing for specific tasks. Then there's the dreamer, general AI, aiming to be as versatile as us humans. From following strict rules to kinda sorta learning from experience, AI is evolving. It's like having a clever friend who's always picking up new skills thanks to cool tech like machine learning. While the grand vision is full-on human-level smarts, for now, AI is just quietly getting better at specialised tasks, making our digital world a bit more convenient every day. Do you agree with that?
AI can talk.
Well, all I can say is I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be sat at a dinner party with that particular response, because it might make for quite a dull evening. It's a really broad and generalised response, isn't it, to that question? And the fact you said you narrowed it down to a single paragraph as well.
Yeah, and after asking it to be more engaging, it apparently went very, very jazz hands American is what we got. So then we asked it to tone it down a bit. So I think maybe the jazz hands American might have been a bit more amusing. But shall we move on to question 2? So how can we use AI in business currently? So have you got any examples of how you use it in your business, or how have you seen it being used in other businesses, perhaps of clients?
So I guess to talk about what we develop and what we have. So we use AI to collect and digest community data or market data, or the court of public opinion in some ways. So when you've got a customer talking about a product or service, they'll leave a review or a comment or fill out a survey. You've got a lot of text data. But then when you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people leaving communication or content or reviews, filling out surveys, it's not possible for a human to go through and digest all of that data and all of that information. Before AI was around, people used to try and make heads and tails of all of that data by using databases and try to do clever things with Excel. But really, that's where AI kind of excels and comes into its own. So what we've developed is an AI system which is able to analyze hundreds of millions of comments or pieces of text data, whether that's in a survey, social media post, or a review on a website, and then extract out all of the positive things, all of the negative things, the topics that are being discussed, if there's toxicity in there. So if the community or the market are being particularly toxic or racist or sexist, AI can identify that as well, and the individual's doing that. So to summarize, what we do is we take a lot of data and then we use AI to analyze that data to then sell insights to our clients so that they can make better decisions around what people are saying and doing. That isn't the only application of AI. That's AI focused on analyzing text information, text data. You get different forms of AI where you can do statistical regression. So Hertzian did some work in the past where we were looking at sales figures and discounts, and we used AI to determine what the optimal discount value would be for a product to maximize sales. That's completely different to doing kind of text analytics. So that's just a couple of examples of applications that you can use for AI. But generally speaking, AI is everywhere. So people use Grammarly to fix their grammar. That's AI. A lot of the translation tools use AI. AI is pretty most softwares and most systems these days. It's just people don't realize that the tools that they're using have had AI in them for a very long time. So the application of AI is pretty broad and already exists in most softwares these days.
Yeah, I'd agree with that sentiment, Chris. And I think when you look at Transparency as a technology provider, we largely work in the Microsoft ecosystem, so we lean on tech in that space. But generalizing, when you look at how we look at technology in the AI sort of areas, we've got the modern work side of the business, which is all about business applications that augment everyday activities. So you think about your emails landing and getting categorized, having responses drafted for you, offering to set up a meeting request with a contact for you automatically. So rather than open your email and read it, you read a one-line summary. Nicola's drop you an email. She wants to chat on Wednesday. I can see your diary's free, so just click here and it's going to put a response back to her and put a diary entry in. That type of modern work application you'll see coming through all of the productivity tools that people use, whether it's Microsoft, Google, Amazon suites of products. They're going to just be part and parcel of everyday life, and they will just get better, and they will obviously make your working life easier and hopefully more productive as you go along. And you'll see better and improved, chat bots and agents. And maybe you get to the point where you don't realize you're chatting to a chat bot when you're on a link in the bottom hand corner of a mobile phone website when you need some support services. Maybe we'll get there. We'll have to see. And on the flip side of it, you've got the actual application technology side of it. So our technology team that's made up of data engineers and data scientists that leverage this tool, they tend to build solutions for customers based on use cases. So the sorts of things we've been doing, they range wildly, analyzing CCTV, looking at social distancing, the flow of people through a monitored area. We do risk modeling, profiling, geo-analysis of where a retailer might place stores. We do a lot of work with pricing engines and forecasting inventory and all sorts of very specific business areas where we'll apply this technology to do some of that work. And the reality is, a lot of the applications that we're using this technology for are not things that businesses weren't doing before. And the whole idea of the technology just makes it perhaps more accurate, perhaps more responsive, perhaps it's something that's easier to do, perhaps you can get an improved output from it in terms of what you're applying that technology to. But our sort of start point with our how do we use AI conversation is about a use case in a business or an organization where maybe they've got an issue, a problem, a challenge where they're not sure how to solve it, and perhaps there's an application with this technology that can help with that. And it opens up a whole debate about platform tooling, people usage, that whole debate about the application of AI in a responsible way. And it will probably start to lean into some of what you'll see from your perspective, Max and Amy, with the impact of this technology in businesses, and maybe that throws some challenges over to you that land in the sort of work that you guys might be doing in your area, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely, Alistair. That's quite a nice segue into what I would wanted to sort of throw into the conversation here, which is me personally as a lawyer not engaging or using or relying on it to do any sort of legal advice or interacting to ask it legal questions. One, because it depends on what the data set is that it's been trained on. And two, hallucinations. And Max and I were talking before the talk this morning about Cambridge's word of the year, which is hallucinate. Probably propelled off the back of ChatGPT and maybe some of the great hallucinations it's come up with. But one hallucination in particular that springs to mind is quite a convincing case. So a legal case that ChatGPT spat out. You might ask it, please give me a case for to help show this legal point. Very convincingly, it cites the case name, the date, and also, all the bells and whistles of the court that it was supposed to be in, and a fake judgment. And it was very convincing. This case doesn't exist, but it was really convincing in the way that ChatGPT articulated what this case does and how it can help. So I think my sort of health warning would be absolutely, efficiencies, as long as the information you're inputting is appropriate. And Max, I'm sure, can expand on what I mean by that. Just make sure you've got the knowledge before, don't rely on it to have the knowledge and have the answers. You need to be able to just sense check it and fact check it, make sure it's right. I've had a talk, I was at an event last month raising this very point, and a lovely lady afterwards came up to me and said, I used it for some research and the research was completely made up. So, sometimes it can absolutely hit the nail on the head, but sometimes it can't. So it's not to replace professional services is what I'll say at this stage.
There was an example of a major vendor that was using ChatGPT as a recommendation for travel advice, and they ended up pulling the service because it was asked to recommend the best restaurants in a particular area, and the number one recommendation turned out to be a food bank. And the assessment criteria was, it's very good value for money, it doesn't cost anything. There's a lot of positive sentiment around the establishment because obviously it's doing good work and it's helping out from a community perspective. Mm-hmm. And it's widely accessible because it's used extensively. And that's a good example of where the criteria for what might be a good place to it ticks a lot of those boxes, but that whole question mark about its inference of a particular venue and what it's actually there for was totally missed. And it's another good example of where you see that a very subtle change in language causes a very different response in terms of what the output looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, Max, we were speaking about, businesses engaging and using AI systems and technologies in their business and what impact that might have from a data protection perspective. Maybe you could expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it can only go as far as the data it's trained on and also the input that it has from its users, and that's how it learns and develops. So, I mean, there was a case of, I think it was Samsung, an engineer inputted some code into ChatGPT or one of those platforms to help him to speed along and get along with his day-to-day job. And then obviously that piece of AI then had Samsung's confidential code, which was then just out there and then being churned up and answered to other people that were looking for some sort of code. So it's like, it's a good example of just whatever goes in then is used to further develop that AI. So make sure it's nothing confidential. And obviously that's one of your requirements under the GDPR, is that everything's, you're keeping personal data safe and secure. So definitely don't put in personal data, although I think they do say they try to anonymize those sort of platforms, but you can never be too sure. So I'd just be cautious about what you put into it, because it can only learn and develop based on its users.
I just want to echo what Max has said there, because obviously we're an AI tool and solution, and we provide AI services to our clients. So we run into the same sort of questions and tribulations of, is this safe? What's going to happen with our data? But since the release of ChatGPT, I'm spending more of my time working with the C-suite and consulting in businesses and even the clients that we work with on the uses of ChatGPT and AI and how careful they need to be in the data they share and the implementation of systems, because not only does it create a dependency on AI, which needs to be maintained and controlled, but there's a desire at the moment for all businesses to suddenly use AI because they don't want to fall behind, they want to stay competitive, they want to keep relevant. So every industry, every company is exploring AI in some capacity, and the risk with that eagerness to implement AI solutions, which is maybe over-engineered, or you don't need it, or you're giving away IP, just opens up a lot of doors to governance and compliance and legal issues. And while C-suite are pushing to get AI innovation included in their business, the legal departments, compliance and governance are panicking, because there are going to be cases where their IP gets leaked, their data gets leaked, and like with many of these things, when these industry trends happen, it will only be next year, the year after, where you'll start seeing all of these cases of Samsung's data being leaked, litigation because somebody's got this multi-billion-pound AI system which is trained on someone else's data, so then it no longer belongs to them. And it's important that people are aware of those risks now when they're implementing these solutions and having these types of conversations.
Yeah, Chris, that's a really good point. You're already seeing in the headlines, cases brought against OpenAI or Stability AI for misuse of copyright protected works in training the tool in the first place. And I think we'll probably see more of that. Getty Images have already filed a lawsuit. So it'd be interesting to see how that evolves. The government did a U-turn earlier this year on, they want to be innovation forward, and they've got a framework and a plan to sort of be, the AI innovators hub by 2030. So they're very passionate about this, allegedly. But there was a U-turn where, because they were intending to, at the moment, there's a prohibition on using data and data mining and data scraping for commercial purposes if it's copyright protected works. And they were talking of banning that, just getting rid of it, just scrapping it. But they've U-turned now and they've said, we're not getting rid of that anymore, which basically forms the basis for a claim like Getty Images to be able to stop AI tools, training and using their data sets to develop their own commercial tools. So it's an interesting space with a lot of back and forth U-turn and lack of decision, or maybe a U-turn on a decision. And I think even ChatGPT wasn't completely convinced by what AI is in that long, convoluted answer. The legal definitions are maybe a bit broad. So yeah, it's just a constant evolution, which gives a little bit of uncertainty, which also lends itself to make sure you're doing a risk assessment for your business, like Chris, basically you were sort of alluding to.
Yeah, I think that responsible AI thing, a lot of people think about it in quite a narrow view, but yes, use and application technology, that's the security, the accountability, the transparency, staff, customer, all those factors need to be considered in it. So we talk about, I'm sure you all do, you talk about AI readiness a lot in terms of, well, what does being AI ready mean? It's not just having a data and AI strategy. It's all of those principles of responsible AI you need to consider. And it's technology and partners as well. Those pillars need to all stack up for you to leverage and use this technology in the right way. And you've probably all seen it as well. We've got lots of our clients are out there. They've been pushing data into an OpenAI service that they shouldn't be. It's only a one-liner here, or it's a paragraph there. It's just a quality, but it's like you're putting potentially commercially sensitive, IP protected, NDA covered content into a public service that you shouldn't be. And we sort of then lean on the, Azure's OpenAI service. It's a private way of doing that, but then it starts to bring all sorts of challenges in terms of the cost, the management, the technology. Is there then value for money in building your own private elements of that sort of stuff? And I'm sure, Chris, from being a provider of an actual AI-driven technology solution, I mean, you must see an awful lot of that. At what point is it data for the use case that you're applying for your particular client's need, and at what point is it broader public data influences that, and where do those two lines cross over with each other?
Yeah, it's really tricky. Like, we go to great lengths to build trust and transparency with our clients to ensure that everything that we do in AI is ethical, but also clients can ask questions and we can give them answers. And in some respect, I actually work with our clients to give them AI policies and governance. So when they look at using other AI tools, they know that they're doing it in a way which is not going to damage or hurt the business in the future. But a lot of this stuff is also kind of gluttony and laziness, because the ChatGPT just gives you answers quickly. It's a bit like Google. You just kind of put it in and you get an answer straight away. And people are impatient generally, and they just want a quick answer and a quick, something that you can just throw in ChatGPT and it will give you an answer. But people are really concerned about their data. My medical records, who has access to them? My personal information here is being accessed to. Alexa's listening to everything I'm saying. My phone has all this stuff for advertisement. But I think there's a disconnect. They don't realize that while everyone's concerned about their privacy and their data, at the same breath, they're giving ChatGPT and other tools like ChatGPT all of their data by putting in every email that they've had rewritten, questions to answers about work. And ChatGPT is creating a profile on you and has all the data on you that you're putting into it. But because it's not obvious, it doesn't seem that way. And I think that's one of the risks, is for people just to kind of roll on using these tools and not realizing actually the impact behind the scenes. And then people like Amy and Max will have to be hired to try to deal with that, the backlash of the litigation and all of the legal headaches that come with it.
Can I just jump in quickly? Sorry, before we go on. I think it's a good point to raise before you implement some sort of AI, that there's going to be some sort of assessment, as everyone sort of touched on there. From my point of view, that would be a data protection impact assessment, which would look at the AI that you're looking to use and their security measures. But as Chris has just been talking about there, it's also internally in your own policies and how you want to interact with it, and making sure people are on the same page as to what's appropriate and what's not. So classic data protection specialist wanted to get in there and say, do a data protection impact assessment early on, because it's really important, not only a legal requirement, but it's just a really useful tool at that stage.
Thank you. We've had a question in the chat which is quite relevant to what we're talking about here, which is IP protected with products like ChatGPT Enterprise? I don't know if anyone knows that question.
So, sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, I've actually read the T's and C's, but you're the solicitor, so you should definitely answer this question.
So which T's and C's have you read? Because I've read the business terms and the terms of use on OpenAI. Are there paywall ones?
Well, it's funny. This question should be asked because they literally updated it like yesterday or the day before. So I haven't read the new updated version. So anything we say is probably irrelevant now anyway.
I've looked this morning at, at the terms and policies available on OpenAI's website. So if they are the ones that we're talking about, I've read those ones. Nick, could you just repeat the question? Was it, is IP protected for use of...
Is IP protected with products like ChatGPT Enterprise?
Yeah, okay. So the terms I've read this morning are the business terms on OpenAI's website. If there are any paywall terms, it may differ. But I'll sort of say what the case is on the terms I've read this morning. So the ChatGPT business terms reiterate the legal position, which is the prompter owns the output that's generated. So OpenAI reiterate that position. They say that as the prompter, you own any output that you may generate. And they also go so far as to say that they also assign any IP rights that arise in any output if they do arise. So if they don't automatically vest in you by virtue of the law. But, so that's the starting position. But all the risks that we've been speaking about do not go away. So it does not mean that they haven't been exposed to any input that you have put in there, which they may be. They say that they don't use it, but who knows? It's in there, isn't it? Samsung have had issues, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. And the other thing is, it depends how that tool has been trained. So obviously I've said about Getty Images have filed lawsuits. You know, there have been lawsuits filed about the use of copyright protected works to train the algorithms that obviously, you know, make the natural language processing tool work. So if just because you own that output doesn't mean that you aren't inheriting copyright infringing materials. So in that output that you use, you know, be it a poem, a song, a book, whatever it is that you may use ChatGPT or other tools to help you write, there may be infringing materials in there. You know, this tool has been trained on millions and millions and millions of data sets. In there is probably going to be a copyright protected work that may have influenced that output. And therefore, it's not out of the realm of possibility for there to be infringing output generated by use of ChatGPT. So although they say, yes, you do own the output, you might end up owning an infringing piece of material.
And the thing is, it's not in ChatGPT's interest either to give you kind of IP and ownership. They want the data, they want the training. If in a perfect world, if the user got what they wanted, then they wouldn't have a business. That's the thing to remember, is there's always a catch. There's always
nothing is for free.
Yeah, there's nothing for free, exactly. There's always a leverage point. And actually talking about the processes that they take from putting in your data and what's called data commingling, it's a very technical point. And we had a conversation with Facebook because we analyze and use Facebook data, and they wanted to know how we were processing data and where the data was being stored. So just like Amy says, just because they say they don't, store it or process it, it might be that on a technicality they don't do that. But for example, we have to process personal data to anonymize it. Now that actually means that we require GDPR regulations, because to anonymize the data that we have to process that data to anonymize it. So we're actually processing personal data to protect the individual's identity. So in a lot of ways, we are still subject to GDPR, despite the fact the very first step is to make sure there's no GDPR information. So our database still touches personal data. And it's technicalities like that in AI and processing and IP, which are sensitive and not really discussed to the proper detail that's required to ensure that your IP is protected, and also you're not infringing on other people's IP when you're using their outputs, basically.
Yeah. Could I just add on that point that even though the legal position when it comes to AI is different to the starting point for any other creation. So as the prompter instructing the AI, you'll own the output, and that's sort of the computer generated works legal position, the starting point, which OpenAI echoes in its terms. However, in any other line of business, if you ask a designer to create a logo for you, or you ask a software developer to create a bit of code for you, you don't own that output by virtue of those instructions. The author will retain the ownership in that output. So I just wanted to be clear on that, just in case that was sort of copied across the board. It's just an AI specific.
Hashtag no legal advice.
Yeah, hashtag
I've got a few questions that are popping up, so I'm conscious we've only got 10 minutes left, but well, there's two that are kind of linked, so I might join them together. So we've got one saying, hi, assuming you aren't all deepfake video. No, we're not. We're definitely here. How do you see the risk of sharing even simple things like publicly available business sales and marketing information being picked up by AI learning and informing competitors' marketing strategies? So that's one. The other one is kind of linked. What stops people bulk telling a generative AI an answer to skew results, e.g. 1 + 1 = 3?
I mean, so the first question is kind of already a thing.
Yeah, that's
so
already.
It already happens. I mean, so we put up a job advert, and in the job advert it said that you'd be working closely with the CEO, and then I think it was Indeed or it's one of the job recruitment sites scraped that job advert and then said Hertzian CEO vacancy, looking for new CEO for Hertzian. And I'm like looking at my own, thinking, how did that happen? And it's because the AI scanned it and then produced different material for it. So it's not much you can do to mitigate it. That's just kind of how the internet is and how things work today. So I would just make sure that the material you're producing is accurate. And then if you see any material that's infringing on your own IP, then message them and get them to change it or take it down. That's how I'd answer the first question.
I would say to add on that to Chris, is what Chris has said, making sure your website terms of use are quite clear on your copyright protection and your IP, and that it's not to be scraped or used. It's quite an easy win to have that in place, because if you find that actually it has been misused, it's not just the legal starting point that you're relying on, but you've also got some terms of use there that you can rely on as well. So breach of terms is important. I think there's also, Chris and Alistair, you'll probably be better at explaining this than me, but such spiders may be an option. Talk to your web developer.
Yeah, you can do that.
How about the sorry.
Sorry, go on, Nicola. Sorry, go on, Nicola. I think you're going to choose.
I was just going to say, how about the 1 + 1 = 3? How do we stop things like that happening?
That's just good training data. So supervised learning, reinforced learning. If you put bad stuff in, you're going to get bad stuff out. AI is all about data. So when we talk about AI, we talk a lot about the applications, a lot about the outputs, but we don't talk so much about how the AI works and the black box technology. And it's all of the kind of data, the kind of life force of the AI that you put into it. So you have to have processes and quality checks and balances in place to make sure that 1 + 1 doesn't = 3. And earlier, as I mentioned, we go to great lengths for transparency and integrity in our AI systems to our clients. We have to have a very robust QA process to make sure that when we're advising our clients to make multi-million-pound decisions on their products and services based on the data we share with them, they need to be confident that the AI isn't mistakenly picking up 1 + 1 = 3. So you just have to make sure that the tools you're using have transparency and clarity, so you know that AI tools, have those checks and balances. And if you're building your own stuff, just make sure that you're testing it and check for biases and things like that.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, stick your neck out a little bit, a universal single GPT model that everyone's going to use for all workloads forevermore, it's just not the way things are going to go. You're going to see vertical specialisms appear in this industry, where you're going to see a very finance-specific model, a retail-specific model, a very specific health use case type models, and they're going to be built on a subset of data that's more pertinent to their use case. And probably you're going to start seeing that stuff appearing behind paywalls with some guarantees around the data that's gone into them and the qualification of data that's gone into them. So you're going to get to a point of maturity where you're going to be using a GPT model for a particular use case from a proven vendor with qualified data that's sitting behind it, and therefore your confidence in that to actually deliver accuracy and work for you in an effective way is going to be a lot higher. But that's going to come with a price, and I think we're going to see, as the sort of pervasiveness of AI technology grows and expands and those models start to take shape, what that will actually look like from a commercial perspective, no one really knows at this point in time. But it has to drop down to a level where it makes sense for businesses to invest in these additional services that they might consume, because it's going to add the equivalent benefit or improvements to an organization, what fundamentally is the bottom line, or the ability for people to do their day job in an effective way. So I think it's like a giant experiment, the whole let's put a big GPT model out there and let everyone have at it for free and just see what happens, because it's going to inform what needs to happen from a responsible AI perspective for businesses moving forward. Couple that with a bit of legislation and some controls, and the common sense element. People now understand that you don't take the result of a Google query at face value. People know you have to sort of question what you get from the internet when you ask it a question, and that same mindset will become something that matures in people's heads when they're using a GPT model or an AI model for the same purposes. It's that 80-20 rule, and I think it's 100%. And if you've got the right checks and balances in place, then you shouldn't leave yourself exposed. If you're doing things in the right way. Like, I think we've all said, that AI readiness entry point into the conversation's got to be a key starting point for it all.
It's kind of crazy. So we've got kind of like a AI podcast that we're releasing, and one of the discussions I had on that recently was about Amazon have released a new feature, all AI driven, which removes fake reviews and products. Now, on the face value, that sounds great, but they don't give you the precision or recall, the R score, the F score for how they do that. So as far as the consumer knows, the user, us, we don't know that the Amazon AI bot isn't removing real reviews. So, and there's no accountability, there's no transparency. They don't share that with you. So if you've got a product and you're selling it on Amazon, and you get 100 reviews and they're all real, and then the AI Amazon bot says, 20 of these are fake, and gets rid of them, that's going to damage your product. And there's nothing you can do about that, because it's Amazon and they don't share their processes and they don't share the data that goes into that. So it's already kind of happening in a negative way in the industry.
I've got quite a lot of questions, so apologies to everyone who's given a question, because we definitely do not have time to go through them all. One of them is quite a big one, which is could we ever regulate AI, and where do we start with regulating the use of AI?
Well, the European Parliament has already started, although we're not in the EU anymore. There's several countries still are, which is a huge influence. If the AI Act does come into force, it bans what it terms unacceptable risk AI. And then anything high risk will need to be assessed before entering the European marketplace. So that's sort of a starting point. It's not enacted yet, but as I alluded to earlier, they're hoping that there will be some sort of movement on it by the end of the year. So that'll be interesting, because although it doesn't directly impact UK-based businesses, any UK businesses that are commercially operational across the EU will need to bear that in mind, because some products that they may already be using and offering across the globe may be banned in certain territories, or need an assessment to determine whether or not it can be operational. And actually, I've written an article on that this morning, which is hopefully going to go live in the next week or so. So more than happy for people to reach out if they'd like to have a read of that, to sort of expand more on that. But nothing immediately in the UK, because they're so intent on being a powerhouse. But certainly the EU might have an influence.
Thank you. One quick one. How should employers guide staff to use AI responsibly? That's coming at it from a slightly different angle.
Training and policy. So there's a big corporation, which I can't name, which has a real problem with people using ChatGPT and Copilot. And they're really, really worried that secret source is going to get leaked because everyone uses it. So they've created a network around where internally in the office they can't use AI systems. So they're taking the kind of extreme steps. But at the end of the day, it's human error, it's social engineering, and people will use ChatGPT on their personal machines at home when they're drafting an email. So, internal policies, memos, training, workshops, send your staff to AI workshops, like, events like this where we're talking about it. So people are just a bit more aware of the risks of using it and what the policy is for the company to use AI and the tools that you have for them to use.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Chris. Three pillars to it from our perspective. Align it with your data and AI strategy, review the principles of responsible AI, and review your technology and partners that you're working with. Get those three things right and you'll be in pretty good shape.
Yeah, I know our employment team internally are quite busy helping a lot of clients with getting their policies right. And I think we tap into that quite a lot. It's policy and training, as Chris mentioned, and Alistair, I think, are the two really, really key things.
Brilliant. Thank you. I can't believe we're already out of time. We have had someone in the chat say, can we have a follow-up deep dive event on AI in the new year? It does happen to be Richard Wadman, but who is requesting whose idea it was to do this one in the first place. But I mean, given that we've got quite a lot of questions that we haven't been able to get to, never mind the ones that we have prepared in advance. Thank you everyone for coming along, and thank you to the speakers. And I really hope that that's been interesting and insightful. And yeah, it's a massive topic that we could have been speaking about for another hour or so, I guess. So thank you everyone, and hope to join us on another deep dive in the future. Thank you.